Give it up harder. More. Do I have reverb? Reverb. All right. There's a lot of echo for me. I can hear myself. It's going to get weird. So do you guys know what PMF stands for? Product Market Fit. We're all aware of the fact that we seem to have a lot of dialogue about it on the internet. So today we're going to do a little bit of a debate type style format where people do need to take positions, and they should and they will. I want us to give people a moment to introduce themselves, but I think I'm going to do like general introductions. This is Tony Olendo, co-founder of Wi-Fi. Maya, your last name again, remember? Kadel, Maya Kadel. Big name in African scene for bringing on developer talent for education and helping teams like find their way in general for product market fit. Rocco, let's just be honest, like you built a lot of stuff, but now you're kind of like in the fun side of things. You're in the VC side of things, man, and like I think we need to hear what that feels like as a product market fit world. The views expressed here do not necessarily represent Ethereal. And then we have, I don't really think I need to introduce Joseph DeLong, but this is what Joseph DeLong looks like. And he's built a million different things that are very well known in the space. I encourage you to Google them, but don't go too hard. Myself, I'm the co-founder of Parable. We work on internet infrastructure and Ethereum infrastructure that goes on works on battery-powered devices. We're all here to kind of talk about what the hell is going on and where we're going. So I want to give you guys that brief introduction, but let's start off with what trends for your opening statements have frustrated you the most in the last couple of years, and why has it contributed to real PMF being difficult to achieve in the space? So yeah, what trends have frustrated you as you've watched people try and build for the last couple of years, and why do you think that it's caused a lack of PMF in a lot of different tranches of the industry?
I think the macro trend of thinking about what is happening right now, what is the best, most hype thing, and then investing like that's going to continue into infinity.
You're saying keeping with whatever you think is hype.
Yeah. If it's NFTs or it's AI right now, whatever that is, as an investor, all I can think about is what's happening now will continue forever. And so they'll only invest in things that are like, but as a builder, you have to like plan like 6 months, a year and a half in advance. So when that market happens, it's all like kind of just.
All right, Maya. I'm cutting people off in debate time, by the way. We're going quick.
No mercy. I think the biggest trend that frustrates me is that PMF and success is Western defined. So I remember building stablecoin-based products back in 2022, 2021 in emerging markets, and saying on stages at Swift, at London Stock Exchange, whatever, we've achieved product market fit. And yet people were like, no, we haven't. But we'd achieved product market fit, just not in the West. Stablecoins had achieved product market fit in emerging markets, but because the West wasn't privy to it, it didn't count. And in many ways, I know we're all very critical, or many of us, especially in the United States, are critical of Gary, right? But the benefit that Gary brought was it forced many protocols and projects to actually start thinking and prioritizing markets outside of the West. And then they started to realize that product market fit exists elsewhere. And that is unfortunately now retracting. And so if you're building, if you're investing, make sure you pay attention and real attention to what's going on in different crypto ecosystems around the world, because they're achieving product market fit that you're not even seeing here.
Yeah. I mean, let's just acknowledge that your Barbados accent really just put some asses in the seats. You see that, like a little bit of that British twang came through and people started sitting down. We got to see it. So I think, like, on that point, Tony, you want to give your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess for me, the main thing that would have seen would have been the obsession with like tokens and VCs being able to like make outsized, louder. Okay. Yeah, so I guess for me, it's just seeing like what the impact of tokens and how that whole token meta has really taken away from what real impact is and like what actual utility is. And so a project is actually considered successful not in terms of the metrics of the users that it serves, but by its token price. And what that has done is for a lot of people who are building inside of emerging markets and are building tools that people need, they are almost forced to pander to like a token narrative, whereas a lot of the businesses that have actually been formed inside of this ecosystem and are actually serving users are kind of overlooked. Yeah.
Yeah, Rocco, from the venture capitalist, but also someone who's actually built projects as well, like digital identity with Spruce, where did you see all of that stuff frustrate you?
Yeah, so especially with decentralized identity, it has a long history of no one actually building products and everyone just building tooling for decentralized identity. I personally fell into this trap for a long time with Spruce until you realize that you can't just, and this happens across the space too, the frustration comes from people building like, protocols and all of these different like tooling, but not actually building products that leverage these things. So for like identity, you had to actually own the entire experience, not just give people tooling to just make credentials appear out of thin air. But this is still widespread across the board, even in thinking about like both the product side and also even like thinking about what's out there. Is a lot of teams just still suffer from the field of dreams idea where they're going to build something and then all these developers are going to come in and build on top of it and it's going to be magical without even showing and demonstrating the value of what they built themselves. Yeah. So if you see anything that hasn't like used their own a team that's haven't even used their own protocol in some meaningful way, like avoid at all costs. Build a protocol, build on top of that to demonstrate the value of it to begin with. Show people what they can do. Don't just like put it out there and be like, yeah, they're going to build on top of it and it's going to be magical.
Which lends to marketing being the thing that wins. So let's do this like proper first question, right? I think it's important to know where we've been in order to know where we're going. So in classic literature and philosophy, there's a concept called the fool's money maxim, which is oftentimes like a fool and his money is easily separated, or kind of evolved into what's called the sucker's bet. And we see, like for the last few years, we see insiders and venture capitalists weaponizing FOMO towards what inevitably becomes the sucker's bet. So what do you think is what is this trend of purposefully weaponizing a sucker's bet on somebody? What is it a fallout from? 1, early crypto moonshot prices. 2, cultural background of those distributing money. 3, cultural background of industry leadership. Or 4, poor technical understanding and a lot of marketing. Yeah, you guys should have looked at the questions. I sent them to you. Pick a position.
I would say, for me personally, it actually basically is kind of a mix of all, where we've seen a lot of different teams come up with like different blockchain projects, and like there's I don't know how many L2s exist now. I don't know how many USD stablecoins exist now. I think we're actually running out of alphabets that we could like add as like suffixes or prefixes to like USD stablecoins, while the data and the evidence shows that USD stablecoins have strongest product market fit outside of the US. Yeah. And so there isn't sufficient inquiry going into, well, how is it that this is the case, and what kind of utility are we seeing, and who's actually using it? And so even when we actually talking about the protocol that we are building, we're actually educating people about how people are using stablecoins from a FX standpoint, and how protocols need to exist to be able to facilitate that. And so it's just that whole dynamic of very poor understanding of the user and not really solving the user needs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Maya was also kind of saying that earlier with your opening frustrations. And I want to give the opportunity to somebody who I think is probably the only one up here who has actually dealt with people being like, I really fucking believe in this project, or had people be like, oh, sushi, or like blah, blah, and you have to deal with like the general like vibes of how people are weaponizing FOMO of your project, or how people are saying that your FOMO is going to dump on retail or something like this. What is that trend for you?
Yeah, like you. There we go. Okay, like you said, I think my stance is for people have a poor technical understanding of how these what they're in investing in or buying into. Even from my perspective too, like what may seem like, you know, the future of finance or the future of protocols that you may be buying into might not be as technically sound, and it's a lot easier to get people into those things through kind of like hype cycles, and the hype really is outpacing the real valuation of some of the stuff. Like if you think of a great example of something that could have revenue that is like dominating the market is like Uniswap. Like the value of Uni like well outstrips like the value of their fee market, that like their possible future fee market. And they're absolutely dominating, but like it's just like the value is not there. And so there's everything across the board is overvalued.
Damn. Yeah, I see that what you're saying. I can't believe that you are going to say that Uniswap's... I see what you're saying. I think I'm going to come back to it. Rocco, I want your position.
I think part of it is building on this, is that I think there haven't been enough teams that understand suffering. And I mean that in a...
Let's fucking go.
I mean that purely in a sense of like, it's a very capital abundant space, and there are a lot of overfunded projects, and you have a lot of teams that haven't had to struggle and to try to bring something to market correctly and understand that the time is against them unless they do actually build something worth using. There's no death chasing the startup a lot of the times in this space.
There's no what?
Death chasing a startup.
Oh, there's no. Are you saying that people aren't scared enough? Like they don't feel the walls closing in. They can just keep creating roadmap or keep our runway out of just hype cycles.
A little of both, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always good to see teams that are like either know the clock is against them, where they have to build and ship something that people get value out of, or teams that have started even without venture funding, tried to bring something and pull something together and bring it to market. I think it's the abundance of capital. And
I think that's a great point, and I'm going to just take that into you two here, because I think from the Global South perspective, or what we would call leapfrog regions, leapfrog South at Parable, I think we're all very used to having death right there at the fucking door. And we're like, and this is a huge thing we talk about with disillusionment in the space right now. The whole space is like, we're disillusioned. Oh, what do we give us something to build? I'm just going to say, I think from the Leapfrog South perspective, we've been disillusioned for a second. So what does it felt like to have death at your door as you guys like build and try and bring things forward?
I mean, in my previous role, so I worked at a venture studio called Nestcoin, and I built one of the key businesses out on board. So I took it from concept through. And we had, in different times, death at our door. Sometimes it wasn't even due to our own fault. It was actually ramifications of the West, most notably FTX. I think there's also a different nuance or pressure that you have when you're building in the Global South, which is the perception that your project is worth less, and also the perception that you have to work harder to prove and validate yourself. And I think that creates a sense of fear and death that if you're a certain sort of person who was born and raised in the West, have certain criteria or meet certain criteria you do not have. And that has forced innovation in a different sense. So let's take an example, or let's use an example. Nigeria. People incorrectly think that crypto is banned in Nigeria. It was not. What actually happened around 2021 was the Nigerian government said that any regulated entity, if it was found to be enabling its users to buy or sell crypto, would lose its license. So we saw a separation of TradFi and crypto, much like we've seen in other regions of the world, so most notably China. And what that meant is that if you, let's say, were an on-ramp or a centralized exchange, crap, how do people go from fiat, from Naira, into crypto and vice versa? You know what the ecosystem did? They immediately responded and created and developed and pushed P2P on and off ramps. So there's this idea, and it's partly because of regulatory environment, it's partly because of the nature of some of these markets, you are constantly fighting. And that's why it really frustrates me, because when you come and have built in emerging markets and try and come to the West, your experience is valued less. When in fact, if you have built and successfully built, or even if you haven't successfully built in emerging markets, trust me, your level of resilience is higher. Because if it is in your something going wrong with your product or customers, which happens in any startups, your government could actively be regulating against you overnight. So that's why when Western projects think, oh, I'm going to expand into emerging markets, easy, and they get taken for fools. They do. And or, if you are building a protocol, if you think that just because you are a Western brand, have tons of funding, you can turn up in emerging markets and that's enough, get over yourself. We don't need to be saved by you. We have so much resilience and experience that you will never understand.
Woo. Woo. So we good here? We good here? It's fine. I mean, like, yeah, I just think let's take a look into, on a resilient builder, building something exactly along the topics what you're talking about. Tools around stablecoins for the global south, or what we call like the leapfrog south. Let's call it the resilient south. Fuck it. Maya, new term. Let's get into it. Like, yeah, you've had death at your door for months.
Yeah, so we've had to endure quite a bit. We are telling VCs that, yeah, we have people who are moving 100 million a year from Nigeria to China to buy stuff, and the VC says, is it legal? Do they have that kind of money? Where are they getting that money from? And Nigeria has a population of what?
200 million.
200 million? So is it really inconceivable that there's a multi-billion-dollar economy that functions with 200 million people, and there's somebody who's buying stuff from China worth 100 million, and they're doing it at a 15% FX tax, essentially. And so socializing like the West to be able to understand what this looks like is actually very, very important, but being able to move past the kind of arrogance.
Yes.
Like, we've actually been told by a VC who's an emerging market VC, somebody who's essentially from the region, telling you that your valuation is too high because you were an African startup. And so it's kind of like black tax, kind of like a reverse tax situation. And so a lot of what we want to be able to like validate and bring out is that there are people who are building a lot of those protocols that Tether's 146 billion, or is it 160 billion market cap does not come from Bushwick. It's coming from Lagos. It's coming from LATAM. It's coming from the Venezuelan diaspora community. It's actually coming from people who are using these rails in ways that most people would not be able to imagine inside of this.
Quick add-on by Maya, and then we're going to go into our last question.
One other thing is that a lot of people, when they're thinking about emerging markets, they're thinking about, within Africa, or within LATAM, or within Asia, or they're thinking about Asia to the west, LATAM to the west, Africa to the west. And what they're completely missing is that there's so much money flowing between emerging markets that never touches or involves the West. And so many people sitting in the US find that mind-boggling. And I don't understand why, because the majority of the population lives outside the West. The majority of natural resources
All right, Maya,
lives outside
you're
the
getting my
West.
blood going. You're getting my heart going again.
Yeah.
No, because now I want you guys to you can just take that straight into this. So with massive capital comes massive responsibility. We have seen a lot of critique of the EF lately, and to their credit, they have responded in a number of ways to try and recognize critique about leadership. However, the critiques are essentially, we need to decentralize power and control of this revolutionary technology, or we need a neurodivergent dictator to lead us to the promised land. So at the heart of both of these arguments is we need an agreed upon roadmap and clear PMF for future teams to succeed inside of Ethereum and the greater ecosystem of crypto. So if you happen to be this benevolent neurodivergent dictator that was elected or brought to power by the people of Ethereum, what would you do? And let's assume that you are. What are the first steps you take to achieve the ideal PMF vision of ETH as a utility, not as a culture, and why?
I would focus on engineering. Yeah. And actually, I think benevolent dictatorships are underappreciated. Yeah. People tend to view them in a very negative light. But speaking about like the Shah of Iran, right? Like before the revolution, is like, and then he's exiled, and in comes the Islamic Republic, who's like, democratically elected in the beginning. It's not like representative of the people's values. So I think benevolent dictatorships have like a place, especially from like a startup perspective. And but for Ethereum, I would focus on engineering culture because it sucks. We're very like research heavy, and we don't focus on how to build things that are built to last.
That's big. I wasn't expecting a history lesson on Iran, but I'm glad it happened. Rocco. Benevolent dictator Rocco, what do you have for us?
I think I'm on board with the benevolent dictator idea. I know anytime someone says wartime CEO, it's kind of cringy, but it's just the idea of that matters and is important because you need some kind of direction. You need like clear decision making and clear places to go. But I think I'm also in agreement too. I'm going to do the cheap thing and agree a bit, but it's kind of the truth. It's like you have a lot of research, but not actually applied anywhere, or applications to be used, or things to scream about. You might have certain breakthroughs on the research side, but when it comes to like practical applications, it's still lacking in various ways, and I think there needs to be more of an emphasis on that and the usage of and funding from certain entities that want to go down this path to some of these startups that are building a lot of these cases. Because most of the time, these funding processes in the ethos of decentralization are actually not clear at all. There's no clear process by which funding is granted. There's no clear guidelines. It's all based on vibes most of the time. Someone who's dealt with this very much.
Vibes funding has given us so much.
Yeah, it's given me headaches, and it's given me gray hairs as well. But
they look good on you, though.
But honestly, I think it comes down to that. It's not only just the benevolent dictatorship side of ruling, it's also starting to have clear processes around what gets funded, what's encouraged, and what's actually used and put to use. So,
all right, Maya, I think you might have a different take. Feel free to be spicy.
I think I agree actually with so I'm pro benevolent dictatorship, especially in startups. Yeah, I feel like this could be taken out of context so easily, but especially in early stage startups, I think there is a space for them.
It's okay. It's a dictator of decentralization.
It's the decentralized dictator model. I'm pro that. I would add though that as well as focusing on engineering culture and focusing on not just R&D but actual building, I think the other thing that sometimes Ethereum as an ecosystem does incorrectly is they focus too much on engineers and just building when they need to also think about utility and what actual problem are we solving. And that's not just engineers who come up with that. I think we also as an ecosystem need to think more about how we also bring in the best BD, marketing, etc. talent because for too long we just prioritize engineering. And to be honest, if we look at Solana, one thing that they've done really well is they've catered to both arguably engineers but also to BD and marketing talent. And that's something that Ethereum has done incorrectly time and time again. Just look at hackathons and how they're structured as a prime example of that.
Go.
So I really appreciate Ethereum and all of those things, right? I definitely appreciate Ethereum and what is the platform that is created, but as an emerging market founder, I haven't really seen the impact of the EF inside of these regions. So the EF last year had a budget of 149 million or something of that sort. And the main question I want to ask is how much of that went into Africa? We've seen the EF employing one black person from Nigeria, and that person is super, super low and has to spend 6 months currying favor to get a single decision to move things forward. And this has been the consistent experience. So a lot of emerging market founders don't really care what's going on at the EF because the EF hasn't really demonstrated that they care about them. But then what's essentially happened is that we've seen a very aggressive push from different L2 ecosystems into all of these markets, and their push and their motives are domination. They want to win, I don't know, I want to beat so I could be the biggest in this particular region. And the EF is just sitting idly by as there's basically a scramble going on now for like attention inside of these markets. And so the places where I would say would need to be prioritized, the places where the funding is needed the most, and the building not just a engineering culture, which is a very good point, but also a entrepreneurial culture inside of these regions, so that you're not just doing the lazy white savior nonsense we've been seeing, like them doing for the past, I don't know, however many years. We really need to stop funding emerging markets as places that we're going to redeem. I don't care about a garden. We need to build a city, and we need to build things that actually matter.
And on the top of that, since I am the benevolent dictator of this panel, I'm going to answer this question as well. I think on top of that, the assumption of scam is attributed to one half of the planet that's building on Ethereum, and the assumption of scam isn't accurately attributed maybe to the other half of the planet. So I have tried, in the past, I've done a lot of stuff for organizing different education initiatives. And so what we did with ETHLagos was get a bunch of people from the Western Ethereum community to sponsor ETHLagos, and we focused the entire hackathon on the power deficiencies of Lagos. I mean, like, this is what I build on Parables. I'm interested in energy and internet. And what happened with ETHLagos was the GIZ, which is this German investment group and stuff, they were sending checks immediately. And we ended up having to have the GIZ, who is a fucking like old organization. They had no problem sending Ethereum or sending to a Nigerian bank account. They had to get on a call with people from the EF at the time, it was like years ago, and basically be like, can you guys act like adults and send the money to the Nigerian bank account so that it's easy for these people to throw the hackathon? Because they were trying to send the money to the New York bank account that they were like having, it was absolutely ridiculous. And they're like, well, we just don't feel comfortable with the Nigerian bank account being in charge of this funds. And it's like, how about you be adults? Like, period. So thank you for joining us, all of you.
I'll just wait.
Oh, let him go.
Have you been shut off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the point there is just that there needs to be stronger representation of the communities that you claim you want to impact. And like, not just at junior levels inside of the EF, but like at senior executive levels where programs are designed and things are actually done, like there needs to be, yeah.
Shout out sound guy.
Yo, the moderator just sent us a message on the screen that said, y'all gaming the system. So we gotta go.